Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with the jazz duo of pianists and composers Lara Driscoll and Chris White on the 2021 CD Firm Roots. We talked to them in January 2021 about a brand new release, along with opening up about this music coming out during a pandemic. We also delved into so much more. Enjoy. Well, hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
You have a brand new project that's out, and I wanted to talk to you about that, which, I think is interesting that, during this time, I think it's very important to keep everything moving, and obviously you've done that. So if you two want to talk to me a little bit about this collaboration on Firm Roots, that would be wonderful.
Well, we're really excited to be putting out a duo record. We've been playing together for many years, and we've been talking about it and working towards it. But to finally be putting it out there and having it available for everyone is very exciting. We recorded it actually at a music store because it was pretty hard to find a recording studio with two really nice pianos.
Right on. So that had to feel good to be kind of in somewhat of a live environment, or at least feeling like you're doing something that's a part of that old world.
Absolutely. It's super helpful that we can practice at home and just we're together anyway, so it was not a problem. The challenge was to find, just to find two pianos, let alone two really nice pianos, was really challenging. And actually, ironically, the piano store that we did record at was 5 minutes from our house, and we were able to record on two beautiful Bosendorfers. So that really worked out well. And we brought an engineer in to record them, and funnily enough, this showroom was not equipped for, it's not an actual recording studio, so the recording engineer was tucked away in a supply closet, and that was his control room. So we made it work.
Man. Yeah, well, and I guess that's kind of the metaphor of everything going on. There's so many things that are being done that have never been done before, and it has to just be done because you got to make do. So talk to me a little bit about the actual album, like kind of how it came together. What was your vision, and eventually what do you hope that the listener gets from this experience?
We titled the album Firm Roots after the Cedar Walton composition of the same name. We're trying to come up with a concept that was, reflective of our values and our family, and so we wrote some of the pieces, and we also did a few standards. But the Firm Roots Duo is the name of the group, also named after that composition. We had not done a lot of composing together before we wrote the music for this album, and so our first composition was actually something we wrote for our wedding reception, and it was like a really good deadline because we had been together for a while. And so we started. Chris began the composition, and then I went in and edited, and then we sort of collaborated together and got into the habit of doing that. And then we decided to put together an actual recording, which was really a lot of fun and a good challenge. But we also included a few standards. We've got That's What Friends Are For, A Song for My Father, Willow Wheat for Me, and then, of course, Firm Roots, which Chris is an avid gardener, so that's another connection with nature, and very much supposed to be a reflection of sort of who we are and what we value.
I was just going to add to what Lara said about we have more originals that we co-composed. So one of them is called Sábado de Mañana, which really means just Saturday morning samba. That was composed on a Saturday morning early. I was looking at the window and I started it, and I just got inspired by, looking at the trees and the birds and all that stuff, and just kind of got started that way, and then Lara added to it. So a lot of our pieces were compose that way. I would, one of us would start and the other would kind of add to it, and we'd go back and forth, which was a really interesting way to compose. We had never worked that way together. Another piece is called Jalophonie, which is a combination of jalopy and phony. So just to make a long story shorter, we took an East Coast trip summer of 2019. We've lost track of time entirely. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Some things happen. So we our leader was driving a Toyota Coachman 1986 RV, super old, still running, barely. So we called it the Jazz Jalopy, and we just kind of were inspired by the squeaks and sounds of that old Coachman, and we wrote a tune kind of based around traveling in that, and so our piece has more of like a mechanical, perpetual motion sound to it. Finally, another song that we wrote was called Tu m'as convaincu, meaning translated to You Convinced Me. I'm not the French-speaking one in this duo. Lara speaks fluent French. We wrote a ballad together that I just didn't think was ready to be recorded. It's sort of based on, we both studied Win Shorter's music and kind of used some of his principles to create our own original composition. I didn't think it was ready to record, but Lara actually convinced me that it should be, and so we actually did wind up recording it, and I think it turned out really well, so I'm happy that I was convinced.
It's been a while since we've talked, April, and things have transpired the way they have. Any good news, anything that's hopeful on the front of, getting to a point where live music's going to happen, or this album is good news, but is there anything on top of this that may signal what we all hope 2021 would bring?
It's a good question. Of course, we're all super eager to get back to playing live, but, having live streams has helped somewhat. Of course, I think we can all agree it's better than nothing. It's not our ideal situation, but we do get to perform with others, even if it's wearing a mask, distance, it's something. Although what is, of course, lacking is the audience, because even with that capability of playing together, not having the energy of an audience to feed off of is really, limiting, because part of playing this music is feeling the energy and getting, immediate feedback and bringing the listener into the music, which can't really do over a live stream. You can only, it's limited, obviously. So, I think things are getting a little better. More people are able to live stream. The technology is, of course, ramped up, and more people are understanding how to do it. That's what I have to say about it. Lara?
I feel that the industry has evolved a great deal, even since when I put out Woven Dreams in March. It's remarkable, and perhaps it's partially just paying more attention to the process, having to put out 2 albums almost within a year and almost in the same year. It's really interesting to see how much people have sort of pivoted their focus onto the technology and all of the capabilities with all the different streaming platforms and all the, claiming your artist pages, and how you can have a little bit more control over your own situation. And I also think it's remarkable how many people have picked up new skills like video editing and graphic design and obviously live streaming and all sorts of just things that normally a lot of musicians might hand over to another artist, but then they've either had more time or they've just wanted to become more able to do some of those things themselves and be a little bit more self-sufficient, which I think is great. I think it makes your music a little bit more your own if you're able to have a little bit more say around some of the things that help represent it. So I think that's a positive. There's been a lot of music that's come out, and some of it that's been in the vault for a while that people just, they stop touring so they have more time, or there's a lot of creativity going on, which is kind of, I think, what we talked about when I last spoke with you about hoping that we can sort of see that and appreciate all the art that was going to be created during this time.
And I think, that's one of the things that's jazz has always been a survival genre. There's a lot of that goes into it because of the nature of it. We're not talking about a genre that has a lot of money and people get into it for the fame, so to speak. So the other thing someone was mentioning to me the other day, which is very interesting, is that on the heels of the Spanish flu, the Roaring Twenties came about. If you look at it historically, the possibilities, because realistically, if anybody was sitting around, and I know from my generation, from Gen X, it's like there weren't these big magnanimous flashpoints. I mean, when we were kids, the Challenger exploded, and there was some other things. Reagan got shot, but as we got older, it was kind of, Desert Storm and then 9/11, and there was these moments. But I don't know that anybody in any generation, in any recent memory at all, has gone through the amount of things that we've gone through. A pandemic, class war, racial upheaval, a governmental structure that's hedging on total fiction. There's so many things that are going on right now that are absolutely mind-boggling and really catastrophic. And I don't know that we've seen a denigration of the American democracy and the way that we live our lives the way we have now. So if there was ever a moment that artists should look for inspiration and really be putting this down, I would think now is the time.
I agree.
I agree 100%.
And I hope that coming out of this, there's an explosion of creativity that's unleashed, because I know, the stress of everything is a lot, and I think that artists are reacting to it, and we may not be seeing it because of, obviously we can't have access to everything people are doing and thinking about. I anticipate something big coming out of this, and when we get out, maybe hopefully some kind of revolution, because there is all this pent up frustration and stress that has to come out eventually. So it
shows the adaptability of humanity, of humans, just to be able to deal with so much change at one time. And I think you're right. Historically, like when we look back at this moment, it's going to be more obvious exactly what happened or what shifted. But I think we'll know that this was a very pivotal time in American history for sure, and just world history.
And I think that's the thing that's interesting about all of this too. When we really look at like COVID, like the China is basically over it, and they didn't have to get a vaccine. And it's probably because a lot of what they do is they heed the warnings of their elected officials, and they've dealt with this before. They dealt very intimately with COVID-17 and 18. So when they hear anything can be coming out, probably most of them were already wearing masks, and a lot of them were already probably in a sanitation mode. So I think that's probably the thing that it's going to be a little bit more evident as we move forward is operating off of that principle. But if you translate that into the music world, more specifically jazz, I think a evolving theme that I've seen with conversations that I've had with musicians is everybody's acquiring these new skills to do technology, which is huge. And personally, my day job, I'm an IT guy, I'm a technician, so I understand these things. So when I hear this, it just makes me happier for a lot of these musicians, because I think there was a lot of times where there would just be this thing where it's like, I don't do that. I'm more of an artist, and now that doesn't exist. It's like you have to do it. You can't say, it's not something that's a part of it, which I think would probably only expand the strength and maybe the monetary draw that musicians can get out of all of this.
Absolutely, and we're both teachers, so I've seen an uptick in musicians teaching online, and some musicians that we didn't think were accessible before. Like, I was just on Facebook today, and Joel Fram is advertising lessons. That's incredible. I always thought people like of that stature were probably too busy touring and not giving lessons, but I think it's sort of the technology is opening up new possibilities and in some ways bringing us all closer together, like being able to view a Smalls live stream. I think they'd been doing that before the pandemic, but I mean, so many people are tuning into that stream in particular because it's one of the few that's active almost, I think, every day they have something going on. So that, in some ways, the technology, it's been there, but now people are starting to realize how important it is, and post-pandemic we'll most likely still be using it, and it's just bringing this into light and making us realize how important it is.
I also think it will evolve the pedagogy of music programs at the university level and in general. I think there was already a push for more technology being taught at the college level, and high school, to be honest. But I think it's become inevitable now. Like the degrees that people are getting are slightly outdated in terms of what we actually need to survive in a world where you're expected to have a lot of these skills, or at least be familiar with these skills to be able to put your art out there. I mean, just the fact that putting out a record is so different now than it was 10 years ago, makes for a lot of change that needs to occur in the structure of pedagogy, in my opinion.
Well, and I'm hoping too that I see more people in the crowd. I mean, I think that, especially here in Kansas City, I mean, this is like one of the cradles of jazz. That honestly, Kansas City before this pandemic was always, every single day you look, there was something going on, whether it was a afternoon session at a local community college or something going on at some event, or at night you could go anytime. I mean, my wife and I are just like, we're getting to that point now where it's like the longing for it's getting bad. I mean, because I do this, I take her to a lot of jazz shows, and she understands, and she really, really has gotten into it. So it's very strange. I mean, I remember the last thing I did, and this will lead into what you were saying about online classes, or live streaming from people you wouldn't expect, like Joel. The last thing I did on March 12th was I went and saw Maxine Gordon talk about Dexter's biography that she wrote. And
wow.
I wasn't going to go, and it was because they were already kind of, the sirens of type going off, but I was like, this is probably the last thing that I'm going to do for a long time, and I knew it. And Deborah Brown, the very, very esteemed local singer who's been around for a while, she was hosting it, and I remember I went, and I remember she signed my book, and it said March 12th, 2020, and I remember walking out thinking, how am I going to remember this? And to this day, it will probably be the most important autograph I ever get. And it's just weird, and I caught up with her and talked to her about it, and she said that she never used to sign with a timestamp, and she said after I sent the picture over, because I have it framed on my desk, and I just said, I love this, and she's like, I will always write the date on my autographs from now on. And she was telling me that Barry Harris is doing online things, and it's amazing, and what he's doing is phenomenal, and it's probably another one of those artists that you wouldn't expect would be a part of the technological, revolution. So there you go.
Incredible. Yeah, Barry Harris is like.
We saw him in a community center.
I mean, we went to his workshop in New York. It obviously was amazing, and the funny thing is, technology was, in a very, very basic way, was being used back then. There were like about 25, 30 cell phones and recorders on the piano, capturing every word he said. There were people surrounding him with their phones and cameras, and because it's going to be an important historical document. I mean, capturing what these masters say about the music, and their stories are priceless, and we want to document everything possible, especially Barry Harris, who was one of the original boppers back then. So that's great. I would love to find out more about his latest, if he's doing like a live stream or some kind of online thing, because
it's especially remarkable to see older musicians that have been touring for generations coming up with ways to adapt. I mean, it's got to be really, really tough to go from a full-on touring schedule for most of your adult life, and then all of a sudden you can't you can't leave your house. Like, it's such a change.
Yeah.
So to see those changes, like to see those people, you know, figure it out and accept it and still, you know, make music is pretty remarkable.
The interesting thing I will tell you, and I haven't said this that much in any of these sessions, but I will tell you because we've talked, and obviously more people will listen to this, but I did get COVID in mid-November, and it was very strange. I just thought I had an allergy thing, and it kind of progressed, and, you know, no one else in the house, my son got it, but no one else in the house got it. There was 3 others in the house, so it's weird how this travels, and it's like I didn't get it to the extremes, but I knew that my body was dealing with something that was definitely very foreign, and, you know, the loss of taste and smell was a pretty weird thing, and of course my stepdaughter thought it was the perfect opportunity to finally get me to eat as many hot chips as I could because I don't like them, and I went nuts, and she thought it was the greatest thing in the world, but that was strange. Yeah, so, you know, those little things, and I think about it, you know, it's like one part of this is that we're all affected by it. Maybe we will never experience this, but I've seen both ends of this from actually getting it and whatnot. I remember early on in this, I cut my finger on March 31st and went to the ER, and I remember asking the doctor, you know, just lay me straight, what's going on with this virus, and what's the story? And he said it's the older people that we have to worry about. And he said that very early on, and I've heard that, and it's that's just the way it is, because all of us that are younger can have, you know, if we don't have any pre-existings, can have an immune system that can deal with it.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the thing.
It's crazy how, you know, how many people do seem to be going off of their own anecdotal experience. Not in your case, I'm not talking about your case, but in general, like, you obviously respect that every person is going to have a different experience, which I think is really important to remember if you do recover from it, because I'm so glad you did, and I'm so glad it wasn't worse. But I think some people just only see, oh, well, my brother got it and he's fine, you know, and they don't see all the people that don't recover or that have these long-term you know, problems that we don't even know much about yet. And it's disheartening to see how many people write it off as, oh, it's just like the flu or whatever. It's pretty sad. Yeah,
and that's just a part of this weird environment we're in, where I never would have thought something would be politicized, but it's totally true with this, is that I think a bigger part of this is that there's no way, the way this country has reacted to certain things, that we can ever discount the fact that in one day, more people consistently for a week or two have died more than that one day on 9/11. So if you take all of that, I mean, there's just no way that there can be something that's flu-like that can affect and take this many people out. I mean, I remember at one point this summer hearing somebody in line say, do you even know anybody that's gotten this? And I'm like, no. Right. I mean, I did like almost 300 plus interviews with musicians. I did a lot in the beginning, like almost 100 a month. And I got to the end of about 3 months, and it took me that long to find one person that got it. And it was baritone sax man Gary Smulian, and he got it when he went to Europe, and he got back in the States right before the whole thing, the travel ban happened. And that was a lot of people. Now, there may have been some people that had relatives that did, but like as far as like someone telling me that, it was like that was the first person. So my point is, about the time I got it, my wife went to a funeral. Other people were going to funerals. There were people around me. It went from like, because I remember that was around the time she said the walls are closing in. Probably most everybody is going to get it one way or another. Whether you're going to get full-blown symptoms, asymptomatic, or worse, it's going to happen. And it's true. So it's definitely spreading, and it's bizarre how it's worked.
And we've lost some jazz. I mean, some older, in particular, jazz musicians this year. That really significant losses. It's
an insidious virus because it is asymptomatic. Asymptomatic. That's what is so tricky about it, and that's why obviously it's so widespread because you can spread it without even knowing you have it.
But I think you're right about, in terms of how it's been politicized, and if you compare the response of Americans with the response of many people in many countries, it's really revealing of our unique attitude.
I have a student who's actually in Taiwan right now, and I've been able to handle this virus more, probably one of the better countries that has done a good job with it. They're super strict. When you get in there, they give you a GPS tracker, and they call you. They text you every day to make sure that they check up on you, and if you don't call back, eventually the police will show up to your doorstep. So it's like, it sounds super strict, and it is, but it's worked for them. And so that's what you have to do to get it under control. You have to take, measures like that, which we're not doing at all. So, it just goes to show how serious it is and the how far you have to go to control it.
Very true. Very true. Well, hey, thank you for opening up about the album, talking about this world we live in. Good luck with everything as we all get back to life, and good luck with the album.
Hey,
thanks so much. Really appreciate it,
for having us. We're very excited about it, and hope you enjoy it, and hope you have a great 2021.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to both Chris and Laura for their time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.